you turn in your Bibles to 2 Kings chapter 6. Look at this. Katie brought this in for me this morning. Look at Hobby Lobby knows what we say at the end of every service. Isn't that amazing? They heard us. They saw us online just like Amazon said, hey, we want your stuff. Now Hobby Lobby is coming after us and saying, hey, my tagline, I should ask for a royalty or something. But I want to declare this message to you the entire time so you know, you never forget. And that as it goes across that World Wide Web as we broadcast live, that everybody would know what we stand for and what we know and we're assured of. Isn't the Lord good? Yes. The Lord is good. You will be amazed when you hear what we are sharing about today and what has already been said and what has already been spoken and what has already been announced. As you know, I don't talk to anybody about what I'm going to be sharing about. The only person that even knows anything about it is Maddie, sometimes Emily when she helps out with the notes. Other than that, the only time that Gretchen even knows what I'm sharing about is if she asks. And so I'd like her to be surprised too. My point is you will see a common theme that has been woven in the service already that comes to fruition and is summed up, hopefully, and wrapped up here in what we share about today. So let's look in 2 Kings chapter 6. And take a look at what the Lord is saying to us today. Are you prepared to hear and receive from him today? Amen. Do you have ears to hear? Yes. Let's read in verse 8. Now the king of Syria was making war against Israel, and he consulted with his servants, saying, my camp will be in such and such. Remember I told you about the yada yada, da da da? There it is. Will be in such and such place. And the man of God sent to the king of Israel, and this man of God is Elisha, saying, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are coming down there. And the king of Israel sent someone to the place in which the man of God had told him. Thus he warned him, and he was watchful there, not just once, but twice. So what's happening here is the Syrian army, or the king of Syria, was trying to planning to be able to attack Israel yet again. And so what he's doing is he's going to a place, a such and such place, right? So he's going to be doing this, and what's happening every single time is the Lord is speaking to Elisha and saying, hey, they're over there. And then so what he's then doing is going into the king of Israel and saying, hey, by the way, they're in this place, avoid it. Right? So then the king sent a spy, as it were, to check it out. And yes, they were exactly where they were. So let's pick up in verse 11. Therefore, the heart of the king of Syria was greatly troubled by this thing. He called his servants and said to them, will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? He said, who's the mole? Who is the one that is going and telling Israel every single time where we are, what our plans are? Let's find them, and we're going to take care of them. Verse 12, and one of his servants said, none, my lord, O king, but Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. The very things that you whisper, the plans that you have, no matter how much of a secret that you try to maintain, he tells it to Elisha, who then in turn is telling the king of Israel. How amazing is that? The Lord sees you. The Lord knows you. See, sometimes we get very encouraged. Yes, the Lord sees me. He knows me. He knows my situation. He sees me in my hurt. He sees me in my loneliness. He sees me in my struggle. He sees me in my victory and all the things. He knows everything. But guess what? He also sees you. He sees you in your dark places. He knows the thoughts and intents of your heart, the very things that you are considering, the very plans that you have. He knows all of it. Yes, he does. Yes. We get excited. You guys you're smiling, you're shaking your head. Yeah, he knows this, he knows this. And then I said he also knows your dark secrets, and you're like, whoop. Not so many shaking heads anymore. More like, ooh. Ooh. Omniscience goes both ways. The words that you speak in your bedroom. 13. And he said, go and see where he is, that I may send and get him. He's talking about go get Elisha. And he told him, saying, surely he is in Dothan. 14. Therefore he sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. So we see the Syrians are surrounding the city where Elisha was. Verse 15, and when the servant of the man of God arose early and went out, there was an army surrounding the city with horses and chariots. And his servant said to him, alas, my master, what shall we do? He gets up, he comes out, and can you imagine? The entire city, everywhere they looked, no matter how far they went, they could see they were completely surrounded by the Syrian army. And he freaks. What are we going to do? What do we do now? And what reassurance that Elisha gives to him in this moment. He said, do not fear. For many of you, the word of the Lord today is, do not fear. The things that you are facing, the giants that are in the land, the army that is surrounding, you feel like they're surrounding everywhere you turn, is coming at you. Do not fear. Do not fear. For those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Yes. And you can imagine a servant going, Elisha, I know you hear from the Lord and all, but I think you might be losing it. 17, and Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes. Open his eyes that he might see. Open our eyes, Lord. When we feel that we're surrounded and there's imminent defeat, open our eyes to see. Lord, what you have and what's surrounded us. And when he did so, he could see there was a host of glorious angels and troops that were surrounding even them. Let's read here, if I can. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountains were full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. He says, what should we do? We have no chance. We have no chance. Do not fear. Open his eyes. The Lord caused his eyes to be opened, and for him to see through eyes of faith what was already there. It doesn't say that Elisha called down a host of angels and then they appeared. It says, open our eyes, and then he saw what was already there. Every day we face situations and challenges, and we worry and fret. And then finally we get to the point where we cry out to the Lord for help and strength. And he says to you today, look around. What do you see? I've already gone before you to prepare the way. I'm your rear guard. I'm your front runner. I've got you surrounded. I'm the only way that they can get to you is they first got to go through me. Open our eyes, Lord, that we might see. And watch this. This was the dichotomy of what happens in this next moment. To imagine that right after he opens the eyes of the servant, watch what happens next. He grants vision, and then he takes it away. So when the Syrians came down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, strike this people, I pray, with blindness. And he struck them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. The Lord supernaturally moved on his behalf because he trusted in him. We see here in just a moment, granting vision, taking it away. Lord, cause us to see through your eyes. Yes. Through your eyes of faith, to see you working and moving in our situations. So they're struck with blindness. Now Elisha says to him, does his Jedi mind trick on him. Those that you seek are not here. He says, this is not the way, nor is this the city. Follow me, and I'll bring you to the man whom you seek. But he led them into Samaria. So here we have, standing in the middle of this army who, by the way, is searching for him. The one you seek is not here. Oh, I'll take you to him, though. So he escorts this band of raiders, this army, takes them into the middle of Samaria. Watch what happens. By the way, who is not friendly to them. Verse 20, and so it was when they came to Samaria, and Elijah said, now, Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and they were in Samaria. Now when the king of Israel saw them, he said to Elisha, my father, shall I kill him? Shall I kill them? But watch what he says here. Mind you, the enemy who came to attack, struck with blindness, escorted in the middle of their city, they have them right where they want them. And he says, let's do the thing. Let's get victory here. Shall I kill him? But he, Elisha, answers, you shall not kill them. Would you kill those whom you have taken captive with a sword and a bow? Set food, watch what he tells them to do. Set food and water before them that they may eat and drink and go to their master. Verse 23, then he prepared great feast for them, and after they ate and drank, he sent them away, and they went their way to their master. So the bands of the Syrian raiders came no more into the land of Israel. Now, let's back up here. Verse 22, he says, make them food. Can you put Romans 12 up there for me, please? What do they tell us? Paul tell us in Romans. Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, don't kill him. Don't let him starve. He says, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him drink. For in so doing, you'll heap coals of fire on his head. You want to frustrate them? When they come at you with whatever it is that they're trying to come at you with, you're gracious toward them. Not retaliating the way they want you to retaliate. Not returning in kind and saying, oh yeah, you got this. Oh yeah, what about this? But showing kindness to them. And in so doing, the greatest revenge of all, because all of everything their attack is completely diminished. What shall we do? Feed them. Then it says that the band of raiders did not come into Israel anymore. Had they killed them, it would have been years and years and years of retaliation, back and forth and back and forth. But because they showed them kindness, this group, now we're going to see next that there's another group coming, but this group right here never came back to Israel again. They said, they had the opportunity to take our lives like that, and they chose not to. We're moving on. Matthew 5:43 tells us this. It says, you have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. That's the easy thing to do, right? We can love our neighbors. We love one another here. Greeting time. Oh, so good to see you. So glad you're here. But I say to you, Jesus speaking, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you. And pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. Wow. Are you sure, Jesus? Because I like the way that we heard it said. Can you put that verse back up there? We've heard it say, love those who love your neighbor, but hate your enemy. That's easy, right? That's natural. But you want me to pray for them? You want to be kind to them? You want me to do all the things? Do good to them? Jesus, you got some high standards.
Thank you, Lord.
Let's continue on here. I'm going to just summarize the what's going on next, but continuing on in chapter 6, starting at verse 24, what happens is the Syrians, I told you they were coming. The Syrians surrounded Samaria again and were literally starving them out. They didn't have any way to go out to trade. They weren't able to grow outside of the city and so forth to be able to prepare for the land that they have, their farming areas. So as a result of this, there was famine in the land. And people were resorting to eat the weirdest, strangest, inedible things. It talks about how much it costs for you to buy a head of a donkey. $0, because no thank you. It talked about how much it cost for you to have dove dung. Once again, I'll pass. I'll take some guacamole, but that as a side or an accoutrement, I'm good on that one. Doesn't matter how much it costs. Oh, it's on sale. Great. Keep it. There was a situation where there's two families were starving, so the mothers got together and said, hey, today we'll boil my son if tomorrow you boil yours, and eat him, by the way. So the one mother does this, boils her son, they eat them, and the next day she comes back. What's that second mother do? Hides him. So then she goes and complains, we had this deal. Imagine the level of desperation. Well, this was actually prophesied back in Deuteronomy 28 that says, they shall besiege you in all your gates until the high and fortified walls in which you trust come down there throughout all the land, and they shall besiege you at your gates throughout all your land which the Lord your God has given you, and you shall eat the fruit of your own body. Do you realize what that just said? The fruit of your own body? That's disgusting. The flesh of your sons and your daughters whom the Lord has given you in the siege and desperate straits in which your enemy shall distress you. So as they surrounded them, this is the level of desperation that is happening. Well, in chapter 7, Elisha steps in and says, hey, by the way, tomorrow this is all going to change. Tomorrow things are going to be back the way that they should be. He didn't say it's going to be in a week. He didn't say it's going to be in a month. He didn't say after you've lost a loved one or you've had people starve to death in your home. He said tomorrow things are going to be back to normal. Well, after that, there is these 4 lepers, ones we talked about last week. Maybe it's you, because, I am the leper. These 4 lepers were at the gate of the city. And they're like, well, because of this famine, if we're starving to death, literally, and we have to be cast out. Remember, we have to be outside, and we're not allowed to be around people. So they're sitting there at the gate, and they're like, okay, we have 4 options here. We can either stay here and die, one. We can go into the city where there's nothing and die, okay. We could go out to the Syrian camp, and possibly they kill us, die. Or option number 4, we could go out to the Syrian camp and maybe they're going to show us kindness and we might be able to get something. 4 doors they could walk through, 3 of which ended in their death. The last one was uncertain, so they said, let's try it. We have no idea what's going to happen. So they go out to the Syrian camp, and to their amazement, empty. Where's everybody at? It says they went out in twilight. Twilight would not be a time of day that you would move your camp. So they go there and they go to one tent. They're like, this tent looks like it's empty. They go in there and they are eating like kings. Mind you, they're starving to death. They risk their lives in order to have their next meal. This wasn't just, it's 11:45 and I haven't eaten yet today. And my coffee's kind of, worked its way through, so I'm kind of hungry like you are thinking right now. This is a last-ditch effort not to die. So they go into the first tent and they're eating, right? They see their spoils. They grab that too. And they couldn't believe it. They go to the next one. This one's empty too. Can you believe this one's empty too? This one is too. And they look around and there is everywhere they look, all the tents, all the provisions, all the weapons, all the horses, mules, everything that they would ever need. The Syrian army had built that camp and they were gone. They couldn't believe it. And they're like, you know what? We might need to go tell the king because this is kind of a thing. Because we don't want them to find out that you guys knew about all this. And everybody in town is starving to death. And you guys are eating so much you can't even control yourselves. Right? You're laying down on the ground. You know that after that one meal, you're like, right? That feeling? That's them. We better go tell everybody before we get too much to a point where we can't even move. How's this even possible? They surrounded the city such that there was so great a fear, famine was created. Yet when they go out there, they're gone. Well, I'm going to read to you in verse 6 what happens. 2 Kings 7, verse 6. For the Lord had caused the army of the Syrians to do what? Say the word. Hear. The noise of chariots and the noise of horses, the noise of a great army. So they said to one another, look, the king of Israel has hired us against us, the kings of Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians, to attack us. Therefore they arose and fled at twilight and left the camp, what? Intact. Their tents, their horses, their donkeys, and they fled for their lives. So here these 4 lepers are coming. 4 lepers are coming. And they heard the sound of chariots and horses. Those 4 guys walking. So fearful that they left. And you're telling me the Lord can't provide for you?
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord.
Wait, there's more. We shared on this before, so we'll just look at it from a high level in Judges chapter 6. Because of the evil that the children of Israel had done, the Lord had delivered them into the Midianites' hands for 7 years. As a result, what they had done, they had gone into the mountains, they dug caves and different things where they could hide, dens and strongholds. And then what would happen is anytime they grew anything, anytime they would ever develop anything and they would be able to, for sustenance, the Midianites and the Amalekites would come and take it away. Thank you very much for growing that for me. We'll take that. So as a result, the people were greatly impoverished. So finally, after 7 years of this, they cry out to the Lord. And the Lord in his faithfulness raises up a judge. That judge's name? Gideon. Now, mind you, this is what we alluded to. We alluded to him last week where it says, when he walks up to him and says, you mighty man of valor, he was actually hiding in one of those caverns, those caves that he had dug out. So Gideon chooses his 300 men, and we're not going to get into that today. You know the story. If not, we can look back at it or read it yourself in Judges 7. He chooses his 300 men, and in the middle of the night, what they do is they surrounded the army once again, the Midianites. And each one of them, they had a horn, a torch, and over that torch was a clay pot. And they said, listen, here's what we're going to do. Everyone has to be quiet. We're going to go around the entire circumference of their area that they're staying. And when you get the signal, everybody at the same time, what you're going to do is we're going to smash our pot and blow the horn. So they do that. Everybody's in place. All of a sudden, Gideon says 1. Can you imagine the anticipation? Now, mind you, it's in the middle of the night. Jet black. You don't have the hue of city lights that allows us to be able to see. Out in the middle of nowhere. 2. Oh, man, we're ready for this. I don't know really what's going to happen, but it might be cool. 3. The sword of the Lord and the sword of Gideon. Got you, Janet. All in this moment, they smash that thing, they blow the horns, and can you imagine? These guys are dead asleep. They wake up, they're scared to death, they don't know what to do. They grab their swords and they just start slashing at the next thing they can see. They're going after it. They take and they kill each other. And here we are, Gideon and his 300 men are just standing back and watching. Didn't even have to take the sword out of their sheath. Notice, they had a trumpet in one hand and a torch in the other. Their swords in the sheath. Then you have to bring it out. And you tell me the Lord can't protect you? These are just 3. We could do more, but these are just 3 examples when God's people face the impossible in dire situations. And the Lord plumb showed out. He said, watch this. 2 Chronicles chapter 20, the second half of verse 15 says, "Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed because of this great multitude." Elisha's servant looked around and said, "What are we going to do?" There was a great multitude surrounding them. "For the battle is not yours, but God's." The title of my message today is "The Battle Belongs." The battle is not yours. You are not meant to fight the battle that you are in the middle of. The battle belongs to the Lord. I want you to repeat after me. There's three things. First one, the Lord is my portion. The Lord is my provider. The Lord is my protector. Today, we are facing all kinds of uncertainty in our nation. And without remembering these tenets right here, it would be very easy for us to be fearful. Now, I'm going to give you some real-life examples, not meant to scare you, but I'm raising your level of awareness. Many of you know a lot of these things. But even still with this, we are not to be fearful in any of these things. First of all, our safety. Today, we face all kinds of threats. Christians throughout the world are being persecuted for their faith, beaten as they walk down the road, their houses being vandalized, their churches being burned, being thrown in jail, being beheaded because they refuse to renounce the name of Jesus. Pure hatred toward the cause of Christ. If we're not careful, we could allow fear to creep in. But here's the great thing about it. Even though they're persecuted throughout the world, the cause of Christ still continues to reign. It continues to move on. And we've mentioned this on many occasions at Bible study on Wednesday, but we'll repeat it today. To me, it is encouraging that Christians are being persecuted. Why? Because that means it's the truth. The enemy wants nothing more than the cause of Christ. He wants nothing more than it to be stopped. The move of God to be eliminated. So as a result, he sows seeds of hatred toward Christians and the Lord himself. Anything that even remotely hints at it, hatred. You don't hear about that in other religions. You don't hear about that. Because the enemy knows what truth is. He knows who is the truth. He also knows he's the way. That's why he plants seeds of doubt and lies into other people that there is other ways. I heard a story about a young man a couple weeks ago, and he was not raised in church. He was basically agnostic, didn't believe in anything. He said, I want to kind of know, I was studying world religions, and I wanted to know what really was the real one. So he went through different ones, and he said, I looked at this religion, and as I read through their books and their all the different things that they had, they mentioned Jesus as being a good man or a prophet. And this one over here mentioned that he was just one of the ways. This one over here mentioned, he was a good guy, and he was this, and all the different things. And all of these different world religions mentioned Jesus. And then he says, I picked up the Bible one day, and I read that, and it said in the Bible that he is the only way. And the interesting thing he said about the Bible is he didn't mention any of the other ways, whereas all of them mentioned him, but he only mentions himself. So he said, to me, that was very convincing. Intellectually, it had to make sense that all the other religions had to reconcile who this guy was. And he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and I don't have to worry about all those other things because I know they're false. So he says, as a result, I gave my life to the Lord, and I'm serving him still today. I came to him as an intellectual exercise, and now I'm living it, walking it out by faith. Here closer to home, we are free to worship, yet so many times we take it for granted. Though we don't face that level of persecution that we just mentioned, there is definitely opposition to the message of the gospel and hatred toward Christian principles and values. But repeat after me. The Lord is my portion. The Lord is my provider. The Lord is my protector. In our economy, many are predicting that the U.S. dollar is going to fail. One threat, you may have heard about it before, it's called BRICS. That is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Saudi Arabia are trying to unify to form a new currency that will eliminate the U.S. dollar, or essentially its exchange throughout the world. It'll be there, but to basically nullify it. Another threat here right at home, if you've read about it, you know about what's called Project Hamilton, which is a central bank digital currency, which would eliminate the U.S. dollar altogether. And some might say, well, that's kind of where we are right now, right? Who carries cash? Some people do, most people don't. I use my debit card, I use my credit card, or whatever. My check or my Social Security or pension or whatever it is you receive gets deposited in my account. I use my debit card. I never even really see cash. So really, what's the difference? Well, a big difference. First of all, it's centralized, which is completely different from, not to be confused with Bitcoin. If you don't know what that means, that's fine. I'm just going to tell you real fast. It is a digital currency that's decentralized, meaning that there isn't one governing thing. It's all over the place. This is one centralized digital currency controlled by the central bank, which is controlled by the government. So here's the issue. They would issue a card for you. The only way that you can buy anything or sell anything is you never exchange cash. It was put it on my CDB or CBDC card, whatever they're going to call it. There is already a similar digital currency been implemented in China 4 years ago. So not only is it in one central bank controlled by the government, if they feel like, say you're saving money for whatever, if they feel like, you know what, we need to stimulate the currency, or the economy, that $1,000 portion of your money that you have in your account, $1,000 of it expires by the end of April if you don't spend it. Possible. Everything's digital. Turn it off, turn it on. If you say, I'm going to honor the Lord with my first fruits, and I'm going to give my tithe and offerings to a particular church, say, we're here. Say, I gave it to Grace Immanuel. And then when a government official goes onto our website and it sees that, oh, wait a second, they believe that marriage is between one man and one woman. They believe that conception, or that life begins at conception. We don't agree with that. Therefore, your gift or your donation to that church, nullified. Why? Because you don't line up with our beliefs. These are very real things that are being promoted right now, as we speak. Right now, you can go to an ATM, you have whatever it is in your savings account, you can put your debit card in there, put in your code, and say, I need $100. Pull out $100, you put it in your pocket or your purse. There's no such thing in this situation like that. Everything is all digital, can be turned on and off. It is a terrifying proposition. But I'm here to tell you, the Lord is my portion. Repeat after me. The Lord is my portion. The Lord is my provider. Thank you, Lord. I had somebody call me actually this week and say, hey, I hear the U.S. dollar is failing. I have a sizable amount of cash in my home. What do you think about me going and buying gold and silver bars? I said, that's not the decision I make for you. Well, you're in finance, so I figured, no, I don't make those decisions for you. Well, what do you think? What do you think you should do? I said, well, I'll tell you what I think. I'm not rushing out and buying gold and silver, so therefore, do I think that's something you should do? That's not up for me to decide, but I'm telling you, I'm not rushing out to do that. Am I saying if anyone does that, it's the wrong thing to do? No, I'm not. But I'm just telling you personally, you ask me, so I'm telling you, I have not done that. You can do whatever you want. the Lord is our provider. Our families. The enemy wants nothing more than the church to fail and for you to give up on it. So the first thing he's going to do is attack your family. The first step was to attack the order instituted in Scripture of the family unit. Husbands, love your wives and give your life for them. Period. We're commanded to do so. Wives, come alongside your husband, support and honor him. This is God's order. Yeah. I want you to consider thinking back, and I was as the Lord was speaking to me about this, I started thinking about the sitcoms that came out 70s, 80s, 90s, right? Every single one of them, consider the dad on that show. He was an idiot who didn't know how to do anything. He was terrible with his money. Many times couldn't barely keep a job. And the wife always came in and had to fix everything, right? So what this did is desensitized us to God's order and reduced the level of honor of the male in his role in the home. So therefore, everybody assumes all men are idiots. Ladies, I'm going to call you out right now. How many of you, those that are married, have a husband voice? So my husband says, oh, well, I was doing this, right? Oh, you are liars. But what have we done? What it's done is it's make it funny, ha, 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 and then it's reduced their position. Next, that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough. Next, when we've attacked the dad and we've reduced Tom where he needs to be, now we're going after the moms. Oh, the moms. She doesn't know what's going on either. So then all of a sudden it's the kids that are teaming up together against their parents because the parents don't know anything. I was thinking about a show that my kids used to watch all the time that at the time I thought was relatively innocent. Anybody ever watch Phineas and Ferb? Well, what is the sister's name? Candace. Candace always comes home. So what the premise of this show is, the brothers always do these crazy things and in their imagination and blah, 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 they're doing all this stuff. And the sister is always trying to get them in trouble. And so when the mom comes home from work, they're always home alone, by the way. So imagine what these kids are doing by themselves, what your kids are doing by themselves when you're at work. So they come home, and then the mom, and Candace's like, Mom, come outside and take a look at this. And it's like they would have an amusement park in the backyard. And then by the time the mom gets into the garage and walks outside, what, Candace, what do you want? Everything's back to normal. Candace, stop messing around. Mom. Well, the dad, complete idiot, too. So the point is, what they're doing is communicating that we're going to hide these things from our parents, and it's going to be A-okay, no problem. Reducing the level of authority. This is just one example. I'm not saying that Phineas and Ferb is a terrible show, but it's so subtle. So subtle. It's an attack against the family and the parental unit. Next, we see shows that are so filled with sexual innuendo that it subtly trained our minds that that's the only thing that is funny. Every show that is on, basically every show that's on TV right now is a blatant attack on conservative values, and we're being programmed to think it's normal and acceptable. You know, we're trying to, Mila now is a little old for, we've always been very careful and protective of what our kids watch. We wanted to guard their eye gates. And so now she's a little old. She doesn't really want to watch, cartoons anymore. And so we're like, Dad, she loves these different shows, and you can only watch Monk so many times and Murder, She Wrote. And so she's seen all the Little House on the Prairies, all of them, right? Now can we watch? So we're trying to go through shows, and we're like, oh yeah, this one was pretty cool. So we used to watch this back, and when we first were married, and whatever. And this was a pretty good one. And we turned it on, and we're like, oh, you want to raise your level of awareness when you're watching a show? When you're younger, watch it with your parents. When you're older, watch it with your kids, right? And you're like, oh, I didn't realize that. There was one show that Gretchen and I really liked, and we thought, this is really cool. And so the first episode, the pilot, and Mila goes, you know what? Every single show that comes on, they always name the first show the same thing. It's always called Pilot. How did they know to name it that? So we had to walk through what a pilot meant. That's okay. Okay, so anyways, so we're watching this pilot, and all of a sudden, every episode, and then we get to the first one was like, oh, the theme behind the show. Yeah, not really something that I want my 13-year-old doing. Let's go to the next one. Maybe that was just an anomaly. So then we watch the next one. Same exact thing. Third, next. We're like, okay, we can't watch the show. Moving on. We get like 10 minutes in. Then we go and try another one. Oh, yeah, we thought this one was pretty good. The measure of innuendo and the topics that are covered in these things, it's unfortunate. But we have the reassurance. Even though that the attack is on our families, we know that the Lord is my portion. We know that the Lord is my provider, and most importantly in this situation, the Lord is my protector. Our education system. They've been doing in the universities for decades. Now, that wasn't early enough. Now we're going to boldly go into the elementary schools, promoting an agenda that the parents are idiots, that they're trying to control you. They don't know what's best for you. We don't need their permission, and you need to think for yourself. Well, I agree. You do need to think for yourself, but that's not what they're encouraging you to do. They're saying, don't think like your parents, think like us. They aren't encouraging critical thinking. They're encouraging indoctrination into their agenda. The Lord is my portion. The Lord is my provider. The Lord is my protector. As we bring our study of Elijah and Elisha to a close, I'm here to tell you that we have no reason to fear. If we look through the eyes of faith, the unmistakable hand of the Lord is bringing supernatural provision and protection. Just like the young man with Elisha said, Lord, open our eyes and cause us to see your armies that are surrounding us and providing protection. The Lord is our protection. I'll tell you that in the event that the U.S. dollar fails, we still serve Jehovah Jireh, who is our provider. If it means that we have to go out and catch a fish so that the Lord will provide for us, that's what we're going to do. If it means that the Lord is going to cause our enemies who are trying to starve us to all of a sudden to hear the horses and the chariots coming when it's only 4 lepers and leave everything that they have behind, then that's what's going to happen. If it means that whenever we leave the land of Egypt, that they're going to leave us 400 years worth of provision and they're just going to pay us to leave. Get out of here. Go. We don't want you here anymore. If that's what it's going to be, then the Lord will provide. The Lord will provide himself a lamb. I know when I read the Bible, it says that though there was darkness in Egypt, there was light in Goshen. There was provision there. They could see what was going on. There was darkness throughout all the world, but there was provision, there was protection, and there was light in Goshen. That's the Jehovah Jireh that we serve today, and he's still the same. We know and we saw. Here we have Elijah was back down by the brook, and he would have starved if it wasn't for the raven, whose very nature was changed, and he brought him food every morning and every night. And you're telling me that the Lord can't provide for you. We see that the widow's oil was multiplied, not only for the fact that it could pay off her debt, but also provided for her for the rest of her days. The Jehovah Jireh will provide for you. We see the same God who was with Gideon and his men that caused confusion. Here we have, they were surrounded, and as a result, those things that they meant for evil turned around and they ended up killing each other. Those things that they wanted to trap them with. We see in the story of Haman, he puts his gallows up where he hopes that Mordecai is going to be hung from them. Guess what happens? Haman hangs from that the next day. The thing that the enemy meant for evil, the Lord can turn around and turn for good for you. The enemy has set a trap to try to kill you, to destroy your family, and the failure that was sure to be your end. The thing that you did, you said, I've gone too far. The enemy set these things up and in our way, but when we fall on our face and surrender to the King of Kings, the Lord will turn it around and use it for his glory. The Lord is my portion. The Lord is my provider. The Lord is my protector. Worship team, can you come, please? As they're coming, I want you to turn your Bibles to Psalm 27. Why don't we stand and read this together? Psalm 27, starting at verse 1, it says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked came against me to eat my flesh, and my enemies and my foes, they stumbled and fell. Though an army may encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war may rise against me, in this I will be confident. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that will I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret place of his tabernacle he shall hide me, and set me high upon a rock. And now shall my head be lifted up above my enemies around me. Therefore will I offer sacrifices of joy in his tabernacle. I will sing, yes, I will sing the praises of the Lord." I tell you today that the battle belongs to the Lord. Aren't you grateful for that? Give the Lord a hand.